My obsession with abandoned Cold War-era structures runs deep. I'm Noah Blake, a documentary filmmaker, and there's something about those forgotten places, those hushed secrets, that just calls to me. This time, it led us to the Anza Borrego, desert in Southern California. An endless stretch of sand, ancient rock formations, dried riverbeds, and a chilling urban legend about the Hollow Zone, a place where people vanish. Compasses spin wildly, and the air hums at night. They say it's the site of a secret government experiment from the 1950s that went horribly wrong. I told my girlfriend Sarah, "This is it. This is the story we've been looking for." It was August 2009, the peak of summer, and the temperatures soared past 120 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. The heat was a living, breathing entity, pressing down on us, blurring the horizon. Sarah Quinn, my girlfriend and sound tech, she's usually so rational, so empathetic. But even she felt the oppressive weight of the desert. "Noah," she said, her voice a little strained, "are you sure about this? This heat is intense." I just smiled. "That's part of the story, babe. The desert always has its secrets." We had Wes Calder with us, ex-military, hired as our survival guide. He was cynical, tough, seen things. He drove the Jeep through the endless dunes, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. "This hollow zone ain't on any map I've seen," he grunted, wiping sweat from his brow. "People don't just disappear. Blake, something makes them disappear." His paranoia was a strange counterpoint to my own driven curiosity, but I knew his instincts were sharp. "That's why we're here, Wes," I replied. "To find out what?" "The desert itself was a character, a vast, indifferent expanse that seemed to swallow sound. The sun beat down with an unrelenting fury, bleaching the landscape to a blinding white. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of our tires on the fires on the sand and the distant, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to emanate from the very air. It was a silence that built a suffocating, hallucinatory pressure, making every shadow seem to move, every heat wave shimmer with unseen forms. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Sarah whispered, but her voice held a tremor. After hours of relentless driving, we found it. A sealed, half-buried bunker, barely visible beneath the shifting dunes. It was a concrete behemoth, scarred by time and sand, covered in arcane symbols and old, faded military warnings. "Do not listen. Do not remember." The words were stark, chilling. "Well, that's inviting," Sarah muttered, her hand instinctively going to her throat. Wes just stared, his face grim. "Someone really didn't want this found," he said, his voice low. Ignoring the warnings, as any good documentarian would, we began to break in. The metal hatch was rusted shut, but Wes, with his military training, was a master at bypassing obstacles. The sun beat down, turning the metal into a searing inferno, but a strange, almost eager energy pulsed through me. This was it. The heart of the mystery. "Ready, guys?" I asked, my voice filled with a mixture of excitement and a growing, unsettling anticipation. Sarah nodded, but her eyes held a flicker of apprehension. The air inside the bunker was thick, stagnant, and unnaturally cold, a stark contrast to the scorching desert outside. Twisted metal corridors stretched into the darkness, illuminated only by the flickering beams of our flashlights. The silence was absolute, broken only by the scuttling of unseen things and the drip of condensation from the ceiling. "This place feels wrong," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, like it's holding its breath. As we ventured deeper, the flickering lights of the bunker, powered by an old, sputtering generator Wes had managed to kickstart, cast grotesque shadows that danced on the walls. We found rooms filled with rusted equipment, faded schematics, and then the recordings. Old reel-to-reel tapes labeled with dates from the 1950s. We played one, and the room was instantly filled with the chilling sound of people screaming raw, unadulterated terror. "What the hell was going on here?" Wes muttered, his face pale. That night, back in our tent, the screams from the recordings began to haunt our dreams. I saw myself, a child, being buried alive in sand, over and over again. The grains suffocating me, the laughter echoing around me. Sarah thrashed in her sleep, whimpering, "No, not him, not him." Wes woke up in a cold sweat, clutching his rifle. The desert outside was silent, but a low hum filled the air, like distant machinery or breathing, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath us. "This place is cursed," Wes said, his voice grim. "We shouldn't have come here." The whispering one had no body, the outline of the story had told me. It existed as a heat distortion, a psychic parasite. It lingered in echoes, sunlight, and shadows, and it fed on grief and memory, whispering lost voices, dead parents, ex-lovers, childhood fears into the ears of those nearby. The screams in our dreams, the hum in the air, the unsettling cold in the bunker, it was all connected. We had disturbed something ancient, something that had been waiting patiently for new victims to feed its insatiable hunger. The Whispering One's influence began subtly, insidiously, a creeping madness that seeped into our minds like the desert heat. Sarah, my rational, empathetic girlfriend, became increasingly unstable. She started sleepwalking at night, wandering out into the endless dunes. I'd find her miles from camp, her eyes wide and vacant, whispering. I hear my brother calling me from the sand. Her brother had died years ago, a tragic accident, and the entity was twisting that grief, using it against her. "Sarah, what are you doing?" I'd ask, pulling her back, her skin unnaturally cold. And I, Noah Blake, the driven, curious filmmaker, was haunted by visions of my childhood self, being buried alive in sand over and over again. It wasn't just a memory. It was a visceral reliving of a trauma I'd long suppressed, amplified, distorted, with unseen voices laughing behind the pain. The Whispering One was showing me real past traumas, but twisted, distorted, making me question my own sanity. "It's in my head, Sarah," I confessed. "It's showing me things." Wes, the tough, cynical guide, began talking to someone only he could see. He'd sit by the dying campfire, muttering to an invisible presence, his eyes darting to empty spaces. "They're out there," he'd whisper, "the other versions of us, trying to get in." And then he started setting traps in the sand around our camp, crude snares made of rope and scavenged metal, convinced he could catch these other versions before they could replace us. His paranoia was spiraling, consuming him. Wes, there's no one else out there. I tried to reason, but he just shook his head, his eyes wild. As dehydration began to set in, exacerbated by the relentless heat and our escalating fear, our minds unraveled further. The Whispering One showed us real past traumas, but twisted, distorted, with voices laughing behind the pain. Sarah would see her brother, his face contorted in agony, beckoning her into the dunes. I'd relive the suffocating darkness of being. Buried alive, the sand filling my lungs, the mocking laughter echoing in my ears. We were living our worst nightmares, made real by the entity's power. The supernatural elements of the Whispering One became terrifyingly clear. It had no body, but it could take partial form during the hottest hours, appearing as a shadow man with glassy eyes and a mouth that never stopped moving, whispering unheard horrors. Its presence caused hallucinations, nosebleeds that wouldn't stop, and violent seizures that racked our bodies. It was feeding on our fear, on our pain, on the very breakdown of our sanity, growing stronger with every tremor of our terror. We found the skeletal remains of the original research crew in one of the bunker's deeper chambers. It was a gruesome tableau. All of them, their bones bleached by time, had burned out eyes, empty sockets staring into the void, and their hands? They were fused to their faces, as if they had been trying to claw out what they heard, to silence the insidious whispers that had driven them to madness. It was a chilling premonition of our own fate. They tried to stop it, Sarah whimpered. They tried to blind themselves. The atmosphere of dread was suffocating. The unrelenting sun, the silence of the desert, and the endless isolation built a suffocating, hallucinatory pressure. Daytime was brutally bright, the light itself seeming to shimmer with unseen horrors. But at night, the stars vanished, swallowed by an inky blackness, and that low hum filled the air, a pervasive, unsettling sound like distant machinery or breathing, emanating from the very ground beneath us. It was the Whispering One, always present, always watching. Nothing electronic worked inside the bunker for long. Our GPS failed, its screen flickering wildly before dying. Our radios whispered back in voices we knew, our own voices, distorted and mocking, or the voices of loved ones long dead. It was a psychological assault designed to cut us off, to isolate us completely, to leave us with nothing but our own fracturing minds and the entity's insidious whispers. "It's cutting us off," Wes rasped, frantically trying to fix the radio. "It doesn't want us to leave." Sarah's instability worsened. One night, I woke to find her scratching off her own ears, her fingers bloody, her face a mask of agony. "It won't stop humming," she whispered, her voice raw. "It won't stop humming." I grabbed her hands, trying to stop her, but her strength was immense, fueled by a terrifying supernatural desperation. The Whispering One was driving her to self-harm, to silence the voices by destroying herself. "Sarah, no!" I cried, tears streaming down my face. "Please stop." Wes, witnessing Sarah's horrifying self-mutilation, finally broke. He grabbed a sharp rock, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at the blinding sun that seemed to shimmer with the Whispering One's presence. "I have to blind myself to the sun inside," he muttered, his voice devoid of emotion. And then, before I could stop him, he gouged out his own eyes, screaming in agony as he fell to the ground, dying from shock. The Whispering One had claimed another victim, driving him to a gruesome, self-inflicted end. We were truly alone now. Wes's gruesome death, his eyes gouged out to blind himself to the sun inside, shattered any remaining semblance of normalcy. His body lay twisted on the bunker floor, a stark monument to the Whispering One's insidious power. Sarah, still whimpering, her ears bleeding, was barely conscious, lost in a haze of pain and hallucination. I was alone now, truly alone, with a malevolent entity that fed on grief and memory, and the knowledge that it was slowly, meticulously, driving me to the same horrifying end. "Wes," I whispered, my voice raw, "what have you done?" The heat, distortion, the Whispering One, became a constant, shimmering presence in the bunker. It moved like a heat wave, a ripple in the air, but I could feel its gaze, its cold, ancient malevolence pressing down on me. It whispered my name, then my mother's voice, then my father's, twisting their words into mocking taunts, reliving my childhood trauma, the suffocating darkness of being buried alive in sand. "You can't escape," my father's voice hissed. "You're already buried." Inside the deepest chamber of the bunker, the air grew unnaturally still, heavy with a sense of ancient power. And there it was, a mirror of polished obsidian, black and gleaming, reflecting the flickering emergency lights. It wasn't just a mirror. It was a portal, a window into something unspeakable. The warnings from the entrance echoed in my mind. Do not listen, do not remember. But my curiosity, my filmmaker's drive, was a powerful, dangerous force. "What is this?" I muttered, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. As I approached the obsidian mirror, the Whispering One's presence intensified, its hum becoming a deafening roar in my ears. The air shimmered and heat waves became living shapes, swirling around me, pressing in. I knew, instinctively, that this was a trap, a final terrifying test. But I couldn't look away. My reflection in the obsidian surface was distorted, wavering. But it was me, staring back, my eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a horrifying, morbid fascination. Then, the mirror began to show me my own death. Not a vision, not a hallucination, but a horrifying, hyper-realistic premonition. I saw myself, my body contorted, my eyes burned out, my hands fused to my face, just like the original research crew. I saw the sand filling my lungs, the laughter echoing around me, the mocking whispers in my ears. It was a terrifying glimpse into my inevitable end, a future already written by the Whispering One. "No," I gasped. "This isn't real." And then it began happening. The heat in the chamber intensified, searing my skin. My eyes began to burn, a searing pain that made me scream. My hands instinctively flew to my face, clawing at my eyes, trying to stop the agony, trying to silence the whispers. The Whispering One was making my own death a reality, using the mirror as a catalyst, a horrifying reflection of its power. "It's happening!" I shrieked, falling to my knees. "It's happening!" But even as the agony consumed me, a chilling realization pierced through the haze of pain. The Whispering One, it existed only in memory. The more I remembered it, the more I feared it, the stronger it became. It was a psychic parasite, feeding on grief and trauma, anchoring itself in the minds of its victims. My only chance, my only hope of survival was to forget. To destroy all footage, all notes, all memories, including my own. I scrambled back, away from the obsidian mirror, away from the searing heat, away from the horrifying reflection of my own death. My camera, my notes, my very reason for being here. They were its anchors, its connection to my mind. I had to destroy them, all of them. And then I had to erase myself, to forget everything, to become a blank slate before the entity could fully anchor inside me. "I have to forget," I whispered, my voice raw. "I have to erase it all." I found my camera, my precious footage, my life's work. With trembling hands, I smashed it against the bunker wall, again and again, until it was nothing but shattered plastic and twisted metal. I tore through my notes, ripping pages, shredding them into confetti, scattering them across the dusty floor. Each act of destruction was a desperate attempt to sever the connection, to starve the Whispering One of its sustenance. No more memories. I chanted, no more fear. My eyes burned, my head throbbed, and the whispers intensified. A furious, desperate chorus of voices trying to cling to my mind. The Whispering One knew what I was doing. It was fighting back, its power surging, trying to overwhelm me, to make me remember, to make me fear. But I wouldn't let it. I wouldn't give it what it wanted. I would erase myself before it could claim me. With my camera shattered and my notes shredded, a desperate, final act remained. I stumbled through the twisting corridors of the bunker, my body racked with pain, my mind a chaotic mess of fragmented memories. The Whispering One's whispers were a furious, desperate roar in my ears, its heat distortion pressing in, trying to overwhelm me, to force me to remember, to force me to fear. "You won't have me," I screamed, my voice raw. "You won't." I found the powerful hallucinogen in Wes's medical kit, a last resort he'd carried for extreme pain. This wasn't for pain, though. This was for oblivion. This was for forgetting. The only way to truly erase myself, to sever the Whispering One's anchor, was to plunge my mind into a chemical void, to wipe away every memory, every trauma, every trace of the entity that had haunted me. "This is it," I whispered, my hand trembling as I prepared the injection. The final escape. I injected the hallucinogen, and a wave of dizzying euphoria, quickly followed by a terrifying disorientation, washed over me. The bunker walls seemed to melt, the flickering lights elongated into impossible streaks of color. The whispers of the Whispering One twisted into a cacophony of distorted sounds, then faded, replaced by a strange melodic hum that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. My mind was unraveling, piece by piece, memory by memory. I stumbled out of the bunker, into the blinding, scorching heat of the Anza Borrego Desert. A sandstorm was brewing on the horizon, a swirling vortex of red dust and grit. It was perfect. A natural void, a cleansing force that would erase my footprints, my presence, my very existence from this cursed land. I walked into the storm, letting the wind whip around me, the sand sting my skin, the hallucinogen severing my last ties to reality. Forget me, I chanted. Forget it all. The desert swallowed me. The sandstorm raged, a blinding, suffocating whirlwind that erased the horizon, the sky, the very concept of direction. I felt my body being battered, my skin flayed by the grit, but the pain was distant, muted by the hallucinogen. My memories, my traumas, my fears, they were all dissolving, melting away like sand through an hourglass, leaving behind a void. A blank slate where the whispering one could no longer anchor itself. The screams of the research crew, the laughter of the entity, the image of my own death in the obsidian mirror, they all flickered, distorted, then vanished, swallowed by the chemical fog that consumed my mind. I was forgetting, I was erasing, I was becoming nothing, a ghost in the sand, a memory that would never be remembered, a story that would never be told. The whispering one's furious wails faded, replaced by the roar of the wind, the hiss of the sand. I fell. The sand enveloped me, soft and suffocating, a final embrace. The heat was immense, but it was a hollow heat, devoid of the malevolent presence that had tormented me. My consciousness flickered, a dying ember in the vast darkness of my mind. I was losing myself, becoming one with the desert, with the forgotten, past with the silence that had always been here, waiting. The whispering one would have nothing left to feed on. The screen fades to white, a blinding, all-encompassing white. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible hum. The hum of the desert, the hum of the air, the hum of something ancient and vast. It's not the malevolent hum of the whispering one, but something else. Something neutral, indifferent. The sound of the desert returning to its natural state. Its secrets once again buried beneath the shifting dunes, waiting for another curious soul to stumble upon them. Years later, a lone hiker, lost and disoriented in the vast Anza Borrego desert, stumbles upon a half-buried, rusted camera. Its casing is cracked, its lens shattered, but the memory card, miraculously, is intact. He takes it home, curious, and manages to retrieve a single fragmented piece of footage. It's blurry, distorted, but it shows a man, his eyes wide with terror whispering into the lens. It exists only in memory. You have to forget. You have to. The footage cuts out abruptly. The hiker, unsettled, tries to research the hollow zone, but finds nothing. No maps, no historical records, no urban legends. It's as if the place, the story, the very memory of it has been erased. He dismisses it as a strange anomaly, a trick of the desert heat, and eventually he forgets. But sometimes late at night, when the wind howls, he hears a faint, almost imperceptible hum, and a chilling thought flickers in his mind. What if some memories are meant to stay buried? What if forgetting is the real horror?